friends, colleagues, students, and VB.NET learners. I'm going to talk about today passing the default arguments to method in VB.NET. I'm Dr. Satish Singhal, PhD, Professor of Computer Information Technology at Rose State College in Midwest City, near Oklahoma City in Oklahoma. Okay, so first thing we want to know is what are the default arguments. Okay, so ordinarily the number and data type of argument passed to methods must map with the parameters in the method header. Okay, so meaning of that is if method header has three parameters, then when you make a method call, three parameters should be present and the data type of each of the parameters should map with the method arguments. Okay, so we're taking a function called print student, like this one here. So the first call argument must be a string value. So name is a string, so when we make a method call, the first argument should be a string. Second should be an integer value, so age should be an integer value, and third should be a double value, so we are passing a GPA as a double value. Purpose of this function print student is to print student's data to console. Okay, and all three must be provided. We cannot skip any of them. Okay, what if many times when a method is to be called, the value of one or more parameter for many method calls to be made is same? Okay, so where do we encounter a situation like that? In that case, the coding labor will be cut down if method is called. When method is called, the value of one or more parameter is assumed without us inputting the value of the parameter or argument in the method call. For example, let us take a look at print student again. So we're going to demo what we are trying to say here. That's the method header or first line. Name as string, age as integer, GPA as double. These are the three arguments passed to the method. Now this is the reality of colleges, that students who are freshly admitted in the first semester, the GPA is 0 because they have not taken any classes yet. Okay, so it would be laborious to print data of all the freshmen by using a method call like below. For every single one of them we have to put 0.0 here, and they're all going to be the same because they have not taken any classes yet. So GPA in the beginning of all of them will be 0.0. Okay, so last parameter 0.0 is same for every freshman in the first semester. Wouldn't it be labor saving that for all freshmen in the first semester we can call the print student method with the syntax such as below? Since they all will have 0.0 for GPA, we can just skip it, have nothing here, and just pass the name and the age. Okay, so basically what we are asking VB.NET is that third parameter GPA should be automatically assumed to 0 and should be filled out for us rather than adding 0.0 as the third parameter. Well, it just so happened that VB.NET has a technology called passing default arguments to the methods, and that allows us to do exactly what we are saying here. Okay. Last argument of GPA is given a default value using this technology called passing default arguments. There are other reasons for providing default arguments. These are that filling out some data value for arguments because data was not available at the time of method call. We want to provide some default value in absence of certain data that was not provided. In fact, databases do that very nicely all the time. In database, if some data is not available except primary key, which should always be available, you can provide null for that value, which will be changed later on. We don't have luxury of that to do that in many programming language. .NET, I think you can declare data as nullable type and then use the null, but that's more labor intensive than what we are trying to accomplish. So example of that is when data is not available. For example, if a student forgot to fill out their age in the admissions form, then we can pass a default value of age as 0, indicating that age was not provided, and we'll make use of that 0 age later on as a indication that age was forgotten, not provided. Okay, so now we're going to go to Visual Studio and code the print student method and show some other rules for default arguments, and we'll come back to this after the Visual Studio demo. Okay, on to Visual Studio. It's right here. Okay, looks like I closed it. I'll open it. Okay, this was for C#, so let me got the VB code. I'll find it. Just takes a little time sometime. Here it is. Okay, so I'm coding this method called print student right here, and when default arguments are provided like there are for the age as 0 and GPA as 0.0, first of all I want to ask you to take note of the syntax. When default argument is provided, the keyword optional has to be used before the parameter passing mechanism, which here is by value, and then so optional passing mechanism, which is in this case by value, parameter name, data type, and the default value, and same thing here. So keyword optional, parameter passing mechanism by val, parameter name GPA, its data type, and the default value. Okay, so in this case we are giving default value to age as 0 and GPA as 0.0. Now let's look at the code inside the function. In fact, let's do that. So first thing, we print the name, and name is printed as is without any problem because name will be there. There's no default parameter being passed for the name, and we are printing this text, then a new line, and then the word name and then the actual name itself. Okay, and if you don't know how to interpret that, well, come and see me. This is the most efficient way to print to console. It doesn't create more than one string, so that's the advantage of that. Now age could have been 0 in case that student forgot to give the age, so we need to take care of that using an if and else. So if age is equals 0, then we give a message that a student has forgotten to enter their age in their data. Okay, otherwise if age is not 0, then we print the real age. Okay, we do the same thing for GPA because it could have a default value of 0.0. If indeed that is the case, then we output that GPA is 0. It will be 0 because the student is a freshman in the first semester, so we provide that information. Otherwise we print the GPA and just the line separator here. So notice that because of these two default parameters we gave, 3 different function calls in main become possible right away. One is of course a normal function call, because if there are 3 parameters being expected by the function print student in the order string, int, and double, well, the first call is providing all 3 parameters, and that's fine. That we expect whether function method takes default argument or not. We expect that. But notice in the second one, if Lisa Adams is a freshman who remembered to put their age, we are not passing a GPA because GPA by default for a freshman in the first semester will be 0.0. So in that case, that default value is taken and it will be printed. And for James, the age will be set to 0 because he forgot to put their age in the form, and this person is also freshman in the first semester, so GPA will be taken as 0.0. So now we run this program and see what the output is, and we're going to align the output with the print statements here and see how that works. So here's my output. So this line here gives me this output here. Okay, so there were 3 explicit parameters: Tim Jamison, 29 and 3.1, and we get those 3: Tim Jamison, age 29, and GPA 3.1. But in the second call for Lisa Adams, 2 parameters, name and age, were explicit, but no GPA was given. That parameter was skipped. So VB.net is expected to take the default value for that, 0.0, and print it. And that's pretty much what happens. Name is the explicit parameter, so that's printed as is. Age is explicit, printed as it. GPA was not given, so default value is taken, 0.0, and this block of code executes and we get that GPA is 0.0 because student is a freshman in the first semester. And the last one is very interesting also, because now it's going to take explicit value for the name but default value for age 0 and default value for GPA. So output for James is here. The name is printed exactly what the explicit parameter was. Age is taken to be a default value of 0, and this line of code executes that student forgot to enter their age, and that's exactly what is printed for age. Student forgot to enter their age in their data. And default value for GPA is 0.0, so it prints GPA 0.0 because student is a freshman in the first semester. Okay, so this is one demo of default arguments being passed to VB.NET functions. Notice it's a shared function in the main class, but that's not a limitation. It could be a non-shared function. It could be this is a sub, it could be a function, or it could be a non-shared sub or function, and it could be a shared sub or function. It doesn't really matter. It could be in the class where the main class is. It could be a member of any other class. Okay, so those limitations are not there as long as the keyword optional is used and the default value is provided in the function header. And then of course you have to think how to code that in, what to do when default value is passed. Okay, alright, we're going to go back to PowerPoint and show you one more feature of passing parameter by default and come back to this to demo those. Okay, we already did that. Here are the rules about default argument. First, I want to give you this indexing system, and you can think of this indexing system not just for VB.NET, but every programming language except Fortran, which is a strange language, and every software system where any kind of coding is done. There are two things: index number or indexing and the item number. Whatever collection you have, whether it's an array or a string or a tuple or a linked list or anything, or an array list, the indexing is done in this manner. The first item has an index of 0. So in case of function call, going from left to right, first argument will be given an index 0. Now this is kind of uncommon for functions, but I'm building this system up. Whether it's recorded anywhere or not doesn't really matter. This helps explain many things. So I'm setting this system up for the first function arguments. So first argument will be index 0, second argument will be index 1, third argument will be index 2, and so on. So here's one rule about default argument, that if default value is provided to the argument with index n, then all arguments with index greater than n also must have default value. This is one very simple rule that has to be followed. If I provide default value to an argument that has index of n, then all the arguments with index n plus 1 and plus 2 also must have the default value. Okay, and that's it. That's the rule. So I'm going to get out of there and show you enforcement of that rule by the compiler in Visual Basic.NET. So here the rule is obeyed. 0 index has no default argument, but index 1 does, and then 2 does. So let me remove this default argument here, and then you will see the compile error. Okay, so I have this here, and actually let me remove the word optional too, see what happens then. Okay, but I have this little error here that it's saying optional expected, and I have compile error here also, that too many arguments for the function. So really basically it's not looking at this one anymore. Okay, but if I give it a argument 0.0 and add the keyword optional, which are required, both are required, then everything is fine. Okay, so that's the rule about default arguments, that once you give a default argument to a parameter, everything after the right of that has to be given also. Alright, so watch out for this use and try to find applications where you can use them. If you find more, we will give you an example of those in the future. And so this is the end of the video. Thanks for watching. Bye.